Leonard Alfred Schneider, October 13, 1925 – August 3, 1966, better known by his stage name Lenny Bruce, was an American stand-up comedian, social critic, satirist, and screenwriter. He was renowned for his open, freestyle and critical form of comedy which integrated satire, politics, religion, sex, and vulgarity. His 1964 conviction in an obscenity trial was followed by a posthumous pardon, the first in the history of New York State, by then-Governor George Pataki in 2003. He paved the way for future outspoken counterculture-era comedians, and his trial for obscenity is seen as a landmark for freedom of speech in the United States. In 2017, Rolling Stone magazine ranked him third, behind disciples Richard Pryor and George Carlin, on its list of the 50 best stand-up comics of all time. Early life. Lenny Bruce was born Leonard Alfred Schneider in Mineola, New York, grew up in nearby Belmore, and attended Wellington C. Mepham High School. His parents divorced when he was 5 years old. The documentary Lenny Bruce, Swear to Tell the Truth claims he was 8 years old, and Lenny lived with various relatives over the next decade. His British-born father, Myron Mickey Schneider, was a shoe clerk and Lenny saw him very infrequently. Bruce's mother, Sally Ma, real name Sadie Schneider, born Sadie Kitchenberg, was a stage performer and had an enormous influence on Bruce's career. After spending time working on a farm, Bruce joined the United States Navy at the age of 16 in 1942, and saw active duty during World War II aboard the USS Brooklyn, CL-40, fighting in northern Africa, Palermo, Italy in 1943 and Anzio, Italy in 1944. In May 1945, after a comedic performance for his shipmates in which he was dressed in drag, his commanding officers became upset. He defiantly convinced his ship's medical officer that he was experiencing homosexual urges. This led to his dishonorable discharge in July 1945. However, he had not admitted to have been found guilty of any breach of naval regulations and successfully applied to have his discharge changed to under honorable conditions by reason of unsuitability for the naval service. In 1959, while taping the first episode of Hugh Hefner's Playboy's Penthouse, Bruce talked about his Navy experience and showed a tattoo he received in Malta in 1942. After a short stint in California spent living with his father, Bruce settled in New York City, hoping to establish himself as a comedian. However, he found it difficult to differentiate himself from the thousands of other show business hopefuls who populated the city. One locale where they congregated was Hanson's, the diner where Bruce first met the comedian Joe Ancis, who had a profound influence on his approach to comedy. Many of Bruce's later routines reflected his meticulous schooling at the hands of Ancis. According to Bruce's biographer Albert Goldman, Ancis' humor involved stream-of-consciousness sexual fantasies and references to jazz. Lenny took the stage as Lenny Marcel one evening at the Victory Club, as a stand-in master of ceremonies for one of his mother's shows. His ad-libs earned him some laughs. Soon afterward, in 1947, just after changing his last name to Bruce, he earned $12 and a free spaghetti dinner for his first stand-up performance in Brooklyn. He was later a guest, and was introduced by his mother, who called herself Sally Bruce, on the Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts radio program, doing a Sid Caesar-inspired bit, The Bavarian Mimic, featuring impressions of American movie stars E.g. Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney, and Edward G. Robinson. Career. Bruce's early comedy career included writing the screenplays for Dance Hall Racket in 1953, which featured Bruce, his wife Honey Harlow, and mother Sally Marr in roles. Dream Follies in 1954, a low-budget burlesque romp, and a children's film, The Rocket Man, in 1954. In 1956, Frank Ray Perrelli, a fellow nightclub comedian who eventually became a screenwriter of 24 successful films and plays, became a mentor and part-time manager of Lenny Bruce. Through Perrelli, Bruce met and collaborated with photojournalist William Carl Thomas on 3 screenplays: Leather Jacket, Killer's Grave and The Degenerate, none of which made it to the screen, and the comedy material on the first 3 albums. In 1957, Thomas booked Bruce into the Slate Brothers nightclub, where Bruce was fired the first night for what Variety headlined as blue material. Quote, "This led to the theme of Bruce's first solo album on Fantasy Records, The Sick Humor of Lenny Bruce, for which Thomas shot the album cover. Thomas also shot other album covers, acted as cinematographer on abortive attempts to film their screenplays, and in 1989 authored a memoir of their 10-year collaboration titled Lenny Bruce, The Making of a Prophet, and in 2016 a biography of Frank Ray Perrelli titled The Candy Butcher, which devotes a chapter to Perrelli's 10-year collaboration with Bruce. Bruce released a total of 4 albums of original material on Berkeley-based Fantasy Records, with rants, comic routines, and satirical interviews on the themes that made him famous: jazz, moral philosophy, politics, patriotism, religion, law, race, abortion, drugs, the Ku Klux Klan, and Jewishness. These albums were later compiled and re-released as the Lenny Bruce Originals. 2 later records were produced and sold by Bruce himself, including a 10-inch album of the 1961 San Francisco performances that started his legal troubles, starting in the late 1950s. Other unissued Bruce material was released by Alan Douglas, Frank Zappa and Phil Spector, as well as Fantasy. Bruce developed the complexity and tone of his material in Enrico Banducci's North Beach nightclub, The Hungry Eye, where Mort Sahl had earlier made a name for himself. Branded a sick comic, though it was the perceived sickness of modern society that he was railing about, Bruce was essentially blacklisted from television, and when he did appear, thanks to sympathetic fans like Steve Allen or Hugh Hefner, it was with great concessions to broadcast standards and practices. Jokes that might offend, like a bit on airplane glue-sniffing teenagers that was done live for The Steve Allen Show in 1959, had to be typed out and pre-approved by network officials. His growing fame led to appearances on the nationally televised Steve Allen Show, where he made his debut with an unscripted comment on the recent marriage of Elizabeth Taylor to Eddie Fisher, wondering, will Elizabeth Taylor become bar mitzvahed? On February 3, 1961, in the midst of a severe blizzard, he gave a famous performance at Carnegie Hall in New York. It was recorded and later released as a 3-disc set, titled The Carnegie Hall Concert. In the liner notes, Albert Goldman described it as follows: "This was the moment that an obscure yet rapidly rising young comedian named Lenny Bruce chose to give one of the greatest performances of his career. The performance contained in this album is that of a child of the jazz age. Lenny worshipped the gods of spontaneity, candor and free association. He fancied himself an oral jazz man. His ideal was to walk out there like Charlie Parker, take the mic in his hand like a horn and blow, blow, blow everything that came into his head just as it came into his head, with nothing censored, nothing translated, nothing mediated, until he was pure mind, pure head, sending out brainwaves like radio waves into the heads of every man and woman seated in that vast hall. Sending, sending, sending. He would finally reach a point of clairvoyance where he was no longer a performer but rather a medium transmitting messages that just came to him from out there, from recall, fantasy, prophecy, a point at which, like the practitioners of automatic writing, his tongue would outrun his mind and he would be saying things he didn't plan to say, things that surprised, delighted him, cracked him up, as if he were a spectator at his own performance. Personal life. In 1951, Bruce met his future wife, Honey Harlow, a stripper from Baltimore, Maryland. They were married that same year, and Bruce was determined to have her end her work as a stripper. Bruce and Harlow eventually left New York in 1953 for the West Coast, where they got work as a double act at the Cup and Saucer in Los Angeles, California. Bruce then went on to join the bill at the club Strip City. Harlow found employment at the Colony Club, which was widely known to be the best burlesque club in Los Angeles at the time. Bruce left Strip City in late 1954 and found work within the San Fernando Valley at a variety of strip clubs, as the master of ceremonies. His job was to introduce the strippers while performing his own ever-evolving material. The clubs of the Valley provided the perfect environment for Bruce to create new routines. According to Bruce's primary biographer, Albert Goldman, it was precisely at the moment when he sank to the bottom of the barrel and started working the places that were the lowest of the low that he suddenly broke free of all the restraints and inhibitions and disabilities that formerly had kept him just mediocre and began to blow with a spontaneous freedom and resourcefulness that resembled the style and inspiration of his new friends and admirers, the jazz musicians of the modernist school. Quote, Honey and Lenny's daughter Kitty Bruce was born in 1955. He had an affair with the jazz singer Annie Ross in the late 1950s. In 1959, Lenny's divorce from Honey was finalized. Legal troubles. This desire to end his wife's stripper days led Bruce to pursue schemes that were designed to make as much money as possible. The most notable was the Brother Matthias Foundation scam, which resulted in Bruce's arrest in Miami, Florida later that year for impersonating a priest. He had been soliciting donations for a leper colony in British Guiana, now Guyana, under the auspices of the Brother Matthias Foundation, which he had legally chartered. The name was his own invention, but possibly referred to the actual Brother Matthias who had befriended Babe Ruth at the Baltimore orphanage to which Ruth had been confined as a child. Bruce had stolen several priests' clergy shirts and a clerical collar while posing as a laundryman. He was found not guilty because of the legality of the New York State Chartered Foundation, the actual existence of the Guyana leper colony, and the inability of the local clergy to expose him as an impostor. Later, in his semi-fictional autobiography How to Talk Dirty and Influence People, Bruce revealed that he had made about $8,000 in 3 weeks, sending $2,500 to the leper colony and keeping the rest. Obscenity arrests. On October 4, 1961, Bruce was arrested for obscenity at the Jazz Workshop in San Francisco. He had used the word cocksucker and riffed that to is a preposition, cum is a verb, that the sexual context of cum is so common that it bears no weight, and that if someone hearing it becomes upset, he probably can't come. Although the jury acquitted him, other law enforcement agencies began monitoring his appearances, resulting in frequent arrests under charges of obscenity. Bruce was arrested again in 1961, in Philadelphia, for drug possession and again in Los Angeles, California. 2 years later, the Los Angeles arrest took place in then unincorporated West Hollywood, and the arresting officer was a young deputy named Sherman Block, who would later become county sheriff. The specification this time was that the comedian had used the word schmuck, an insulting Yiddish term that is an obscene term for penis. On December 5, 1962, Bruce was arrested at the legendary Gate of Horn Folk Club in Chicago. The same year he played at Peter Cook's The Establishment Club in London. And in April the next year he was barred from entering England by the Home Office as an undesirable alien. In April 1964 he appeared twice at the Café Au Go-Go in Greenwich Village, with undercover police detectives in the audience. He was arrested along with the club owners, Howard and Ellie Solomon, who were arrested for allowing an obscene performance to take place. On both occasions, he was arrested after leaving the stage. The complaints again pertaining to his use of various obscenities. A three-judge panel presided over his widely publicized six-month trial, prosecuted by Manhattan Assistant D.A. Richard Koo, with Ephraim London and Martin Garbus as the defense attorneys. Bruce and club owner Howard Solomon were both found guilty of obscenity on November 4, 1964. The conviction was announced despite positive testimony and petitions of support from, among other artists, writers and educators, Woody Allen, Bob Dylan, Jules Feiffer, Allen Ginsberg, Norman Mailer, William Styron, and James Baldwin, and Manhattan journalist and television personality Dorothy Kilgallen and sociologist Herbert Garnes. Bruce was sentenced on December 21, 1964 to 4 months in a workhouse. He was set free on bail during the appeals process and died before the appeal was decided. Solomon later saw his conviction overturned. Bruce, who died before the decision, never had his conviction stricken. Bruce later received a full posthumous gubernatorial pardon. Later years. Despite his prominence as a comedian, Bruce appeared on network television only 6 times in his life. In his later club performances, Bruce was known for relating the details of his encounters with the police directly in his comedy routine. These performances often included rants about his court battles over obscenity charges, tirades against fascism, and complaints that he was being denied his right to freedom of speech. He was banned outright from several U.S. cities, and in 1962 an interview he was scheduled to give on Australian television was banned in advance by the Australian Broadcasting Commission. Increasing drug use also affected his health. By 1966 he had been blacklisted by nearly every nightclub in the United States, as owners feared prosecution for obscenity. Bruce did give a famous performance at the Berkeley Community Theatre in December 1965. It was recorded and became his last live album, titled The Berkeley Concert. His performance here has been described as lucid, clear and calm, and one of his best. His last performance took place on June 25, 1966 at the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco, on a bill with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. The performance was not remembered fondly by Bill Graham, whose memoir describes Bruce as whacked out on amphetamine. Graham thought that Bruce finished his set emotionally disturbed. Zappa asked Bruce to sign his draft card, but the suspicious Bruce refused. At the request of Hugh Hefner and with the aid of Paul Krasner, Bruce wrote an autobiography, serialized in Playboy in 1964 and 1965. This material was later published as the book How to Talk Dirty and Influence People. Hefner had long assisted Bruce's career, featuring him in the television debut of Playboy's Penthouse in October 1959. During this time, Bruce also contributed a number of articles to Paul Krasner's satirical magazine The Realist. Death and Posthumous Pardon. On August 3, 1966, a bearded Lenny Bruce was found dead in the bathroom of his Hollywood Hills home at 8825 W. Hollywood Boulevard. The official photo, taken at the scene, showed Bruce lying naked on the floor, a syringe and burned bottle cap nearby, along with various other narcotics paraphernalia. Record producer Phil Spector, a friend of Bruce's, bought the negatives of the photographs to keep them from the press. The official cause of death was acute morphine poisoning caused by an accidental overdose. Quote, his remains were interred in Eden Memorial Park Cemetery in Mission Hills, California. But an unconventional memorial on August 21 was controversial enough to keep his name in the spotlight. The service saw over 500 people pay their respects. Led by Spector, cemetery officials had tried to block the ceremony after advertisements for the event encouraged attendees to bring box lunches and noisemakers. Dick Schaap eulogized Bruce in Playboy with the memorable last line, "One last four-letter word for Lenny. Dead. At 40. That's obscene." Quote, his epitaph reads, "Beloved father, devoted son, peace at last." Quote, Bruce is survived by his daughter, Kitty Bruce, born Brandy Kathleen Bruce, who lives in Pennsylvania. At the time of his death, his girlfriend was comedian Lotus Weinstock. On December 23, 2003, 37 years after Bruce's death, New York Governor George Pataki granted him a posthumous pardon for his obscenity conviction. Legacy. Bruce was the subject of the 1974 biographical film Lenny, directed by Bob Fosse and starring Dustin Hoffman, in an Academy Award-nominated Best Actor role, and based on the Broadway stage play of the same name written by Julian Barry and starring Cliff Gorman in his 1972 Tony Award-winning role. In addition, the main character's editing of a fictionalized film version of Lenny was a major part of Fosse's own biopic, the 1979 Academy Award-nominated All That Jazz. The documentary Lenny Bruce, Swear to Tell the Truth, directed by Robert B. Vide and narrated by Robert De Niro, was released in 1998. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. In 2004, Comedy Central listed Bruce at number 3 on its list of the 100 greatest stand-ups of all time, placing above Woody Allen, 4th, and below Richard Pryor, 1st, and George Carlin, 2nd, in popular culture. In 1966, Grace Slick co-wrote and sang the Great Society song, Father Bruce. Bruce is pictured in the top row of the cover of the Beatles' 1967 album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The clip of a news broadcast featured in 7 O'Clock News, Silent Night by Simon & Garfunkel carries the ostensible newscast audio of Lenny Bruce's death. In another track on the album Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, A Simple Desultory Philippic, or How I Was Robert McNamara'd into Submission. Quote, Paul Simon sings, quote, I learned the truth from Lenny Bruce, that all my wealth won't buy me a health. Quote, Tim Howard's fourth album Tim Howard and 3 Live in Concert, released in 1968, includes his song Lenny's Tune written about his friend Lenny Bruce. Nico's 1967 album Chelsea Girl includes a track entitled Eulogy to Lenny Bruce, which was Lenny's Tune by Tim Howard, with the lyrics slightly altered. In it she describes her sorrow and anger at Bruce's death. In the 1979 movie All That Jazz, Joe Gideon, alter ego of the film's director Bob Fosse, is editing a Lenny-like movie, paralleling Fosse's real-life editing of Lenny. The film is criticized in All That Jazz, precipitating Gideon's heart attack, again paralleling the heart attack Fosse suffered while working on Lenny. Bob Dylan's 1981 song, Lenny Bruce, from his Shot of Love album describes a brief taxi ride shared by the two men. In the last line of the song, Dylan recalls, Lenny Bruce was bad. He was the brother that he never had. Quote, Phil Ochs wrote a song eulogizing the late comedian, titled, Doesn't Lenny Live Here Anymore? Quote, The song is featured on his 1969 album Rehearsals for Retirement. R.E.M.'s 1987 song, It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine, includes references to a quartet of famous people all sharing the initials L.B., with Lenny Bruce being one of them. The others being Leonard Bernstein, Leonid Brezhnev and Lester Bangs. The opening line of the song mentioning Bruce goes, quote, "That's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds and snakes, an aeroplane. Lenny Bruce is not afraid." Quote, Lenny Bruce appears as a character in Don DeLillo's 1997 novel Underworld. In the novel, Bruce does a stand-up routine about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Genesis 1974 song, Broadway melody of 1974, depicts a dystopic New York where Lenny Bruce declares a truce and plays his other hand. Marshall McLuhan, Casual Viewin', Head Buried in the Sand, and Groucho, with his movies trailing, stands alone with his punchline failing. Emily Haines sings in the band Metric's song, On the Sly, that "For Halloween I want to be Lenny Bruce." The Stranglers' single, No More Heroes, includes the line, "Whatever happened to dear old Lenny?" And although this does not specifically refer to Lenny Bruce, the live version featured on the album Live Excerpt says, "Whatever happened to dear old Lenny Bruce?" Quote, Lenny Bruce is listed as a Bohemian idol in the song, La Vie Bohème from the musical Rent. The British rapper Scroobius Pip mentions Bruce in the introduction to the album Distraction Pieces. "If I say fuck a lot, well then I may gain more attention. If I say cunt, well then with some of you there will be tension. I find this interesting cause in the end these are just words, you give them power when you cower. Man, it is so absurd. But all that was covered by Lenny Bruce back in the day. Nothing's original now, I am repeating what I say." Quote, Joy Zipper's 2005 album The Heartlight Set features a track named For Lenny's Own Pleasure. Quote, Nada Surf's song, Imaginary Friends, from their 2005 album The Weight is a Gift, references Lenny Bruce in its lyrics. Lenny Bruce's bug eyes stare from an LP, asking me just what kind of fight I've got in me. John Mayall's album The Turning Point, 1969, contains an opening track titled The Laws Must Change, where he references Lenny Bruce. The lyrics are, Lenny Bruce was trying to tell you many things before he died. Don't throw rocks at policemen, but get the knots of law untied. Schmaltz Brewing Company brews a year-round beer called Bittersweet Lenny's R.I.P.A., and the tagline is, brewed with an obscene amount of hops. Quote, books by and or about Bruce. Bruce, Lenny. Stamp Help Out. Self-published pamphlet. 1962. Bruce, Lenny. How to Talk Dirty and Influence People. Playboy Publishing. 1967. Autobiography. Released posthumously. By others. Barry, Julian. Lenny. Play. Grove Press. Inc. 1971. Bruce. Honey. Honey. The Life and Loves of Lenny's Shady Lady. Playboy Press. 1976. With Dana Benenson. Bruce. Kitty. B. Almost. Unpublished Lenny Bruce. 1984. Running Press. Includes a graphically spruced-up reproduction of Stamp Help Out. Single quote. Cohen, John. Ed. Compiler. The Essential Lenny Bruce. Ballantine Books. 1967. Collins, Ronald and David Scover. The Trials of Lenny Bruce. The Fall and Rise of an American Icon. Sourcebooks. 2002. DeLeo, Don. Underworld. Simon & Schuster Inc. 1997. Denton, Bradley. The Calvin Coolidge Home for Dead Comedians. An award-winning collection of science fiction stories in which the title story has Lenny Bruce as one of the two protagonists. Goldman, Albert. With Lawrence Schiller. Ladies and Gentlemen. Lenny Bruce. Random House. 1974. Josepha. Brian. What the Psychic Saw. Sterling House Publisher. 2005. Kofsky. Frank. Lenny Bruce. The Comedian as Social Critic and Secular Moralist. Monad Press. 1974. Kringers. Damien. Lenny Bruce. 13 Days in Sydney. Independence Jones Guerrilla Press. Sydney. 2010. A study of Bruce's ill-fated September 1962 tour Down Under. Marciniak. V. Wade P. Politics, Humor and the Counterculture. Laughter in the Age of Decay. New York, etc. Peter Lang. 2008. Smith. Valerie Kohler. Lenny. Novelization based on the Barry scripted, Foss-directed film. Grove Press, Inc. 1974. Thomas. William Carl. Lenny Bruce. The Making of a Prophet. 2. Memoir and Pictures from Bruce's Principal Collaborator. First printing. Archon Books. 1989. Second printing. Media Maestro. 2002. Japanese edition. DHC Corp. Tokyo. 2001. Filmography. Partial discography. See also. List of civil rights leaders. Dirty Mouth. Footnotes. JSTOR. College English. Volume 38. No. 5. Literacy and Basics. January 1977. pp. 517 to 519. Retrieved 6 July 2007. Lenny Bruce. Britannica Concise. Retrieved March 27, 2006. Bruce. Lenny, The Columbia Encyclopedia. 6th edition. 2001-205. Quote. Retrieved March 27, 2006. Lenny Bruce. A Hutu Profile. Retrieved March 27, 2006. Lenny Bruce. Retrieved March 27, 2006. A Genesis Discography. Retrieved September 14, 2012. The official Lenny Bruce website. Lenny Bruce at the Internet Movie Database. Famous trials. The Lenny Bruce Trial. 1964. University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law. Includes Linda Douglas. The Lenny Bruce Trial. An account. 2003. Web Citation Archive. Aslant. Edward. Lenny Bruce Again. Shecky Magazine. August 22, 2006. Gilmore, John. Lenny Bruce and the Bunny. Excerpt from Laid Bare. A Memoir of Wrecked Lives and the Hollywood Death Trip. Amok Books. 1997. ISBN 9781878923080. Harnish. Larry. Voices. Los Angeles Times. April 13, 2007. Reminiscences by saxophonist Dave Pell. Kaufman, Anthony. Robert Vides. Lenny Bruce. 12 Years in the Negotiations, at the Wayback Machine. Archived April 16, 2008. Interview with Swear to Tell the Truth producer. IndieWire.com. April 16, 2008. Hentoff, Nat. Lenny Bruce. The Crucifixion of a True Believer. Gadfly March, April 2001. Sloan. Will. Is Lenny Bruce still funny? Quote. Hazlitt. November 4, 2014. Smith. Daniel V. The Complete Lenny Bruce Chronology. Fan site. Lenny Bruce at Find a Grave. Lenny Bruce. The Making of a Prophet Memoir and Pictures from Bruce's Principal Collaborator. Media Maestro 2001. The Pot Smokers. A satirical article by Lenny Bruce. Reprinted in the almost unpublished Lenny Bruce. Idioms for Marijuana Cigarettes. By Lenny Bruce. Reprinted in the almost unpublished Lenny Bruce. 3. Lenny Bruce. Remembering a Comic Genius, by Tom Degan. Correspondence and other papers pertaining to Lenny Bruce's drug case, held by the Billy Rose Theatre Division, New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. Kringers, Damien. 2012. Lenny Bruce's Visit to Sydney 1962. Dictionary of Sydney. Retrieved 2 October 2015. CC by SAR. Audio, video. Come and gone. Thank you. Mr. Masked Man. Quote, My KPFA, a historical footnote. 1961 Jazz Workshop performance and 2 1963 performances. Video clips relating to the trial of Lenny Bruce as assembled by the University of Missouri-Kansas City Law School.